What started as a Saturday morning coffee date turned into a podcast where we chat about things like faith, family, finances, and so much more.
In a world that is encouraging you to live your truth and to follow your heart, we want to encourage you to live devoted to the truth.
The Bible has a lot to say about how to live a victorious Christian life, and we want to share practical insight in how to apply those truths to your life as we endeavor to apply them to our own lives as well.
If you enjoy this podcast, please leave us a review and share these episodes with your friends so that you can help them live this devoted life too. Welcome to a new season of This Devoted Life podcast. My name is Shanda.
And I'm James. You probably noticed a new intro, and we are excited to be back. So we did take a little bit of time off, and we really had a great holiday season, had a lot of good family time to reflect. And one of the things that we reflected on quite a bit is what to really dial in on with this devoted life. Shanda has the different social media platforms. We have the YouTube channel, and we just really want to dial in on how to live really a devoted life, right? Great marriage, great family, great parenting, just a lot of things, the faith, finances, and all of the other things in between on the daily life.
Yeah, with so many different avenues for being able to share those things, we wanted to make sure that we were using the right tools to help encourage you to live a devoted life. And as we were looking at all the different avenues of social media and, like you had mentioned, like YouTube and whatnot, we're only two people, so we can only do so much. We don't have like a team working with us or anything like that. But we've been listening to just a few different sermons lately that were just talking about how we should be using our talents for the Lord. And this is something that we really enjoy doing. And it just kind of gave us that little bit of, the shot in the arm to say, hey, you need to get back into this and continue to do, what I called you to do and to keep sharing my word, the truth, because the world needs truth in it right now.
More than ever. I mean, I think every generation says that more than ever, but every generation has their own problems. But man alive, it definitely seems like Satan's attacking in so many different fronts. And there's just really, I never get scared or concerned, honestly. To me, it's just opportunity, right? And it just makes it that much easier to stand out in the crowd or in the world and really kind of just band together. It's not an us versus them or us versus you type thing. It's just let's collaborate. Let's really dial in on things that we can do. There are a lot of things that we can't influence or maybe we can't do, but there are also a lot of things we can do. And that energizes us, and that's just something that we want to share.
Yeah, and we want to be a voice for good in this world and being
sure.
able to share the truth, which is what we believe the Word of God.
Right. Yep. Yeah. So honestly, that's a pretty good segue into what we're going to talk about today, today's topic. So Shanda took a legit social media break over the past, how long exactly was it?
It was almost 2 months. It was for sure over a month and a half.
Yeah. So she wanted to take that time and honestly, just over the holidays, take a step back and spend time with family and focus. Again, we like not to reiterate it again, but just really take that time to focus on the business, her, we homeschool. So, there was obviously right in the middle of the school year here. And really, I'm working outside the home. This is, like she said, just her and I as far as this devoted life, but I have my day job and, it has nothing to do with social media or influeing per se.
You put up with it when I asked you to be a part of it.
Yeah. But again, like you said, the motive here is just to help people. It is kind of a ministry of ours, not that it'll never be more of a business, but we have fun with it and we just want to help out. So, I guess, can you go into a little bit of why you took the break?
Well, it's funny because I had not really been planning on taking a break, but about 6 months ago, I just had the random thought of, if God ever asked me to take a break from social media, could I do it and would I do it willingly?
Hmm.
And I took a really close evaluation, just like, it was a split second, but I was like, man, you know what? That would actually be really hard for me to do because I love being online. I love
Sure.
interacting with being a homeschool mom and a stay-at-home mom. The online community is kind of like my little branch out into the world. It's how I keep up with the news. It's how I, interact with my friends. It's how I share what's going on in our home.
Yeah.
It's like my little lens out. I mean, not that we're so introspective here that we don't have like people in our actual community, but it's just like one thing that I really enjoy. And so when I took an honest look at it, I thought I could do it if I had to,
Hmm.
but I didn't feel like God was actually calling me to in that moment. It
Sure.
just was a passing thought. And then fast forward, this would have been maybe 2 months later.
Hmm.
I was doing my devotions and I was sitting and I was praying, and I was praying about something very specific, something that was heavy on my heart in that moment. It had nothing to do with social media. It had nothing to do with taking a break. And I was sitting there and I just said, Lord, I don't know what to do right now. And my next thought was, you need to take a social media break.
Hmm.
And I thought, I don't know how that could be any more clear. I don't see how the two are connected right now, but I feel very heavily that God in that moment, used through the Holy Spirit, was asking me to take a break.
What does his voice sound like? Was it a large, booming, audible voice that told you this?
It sounded like James. No, no, it just was like that still small voice.
Right.
It
Yeah.
truly was.
Yep.
And it's not like I was actually hearing anything audibly. It just was the next thought. And I do believe that when we are in tune with the Holy Spirit, those are promptings from
Yeah,
him,
for sure.
and we talk regularly about simple daily steps of obedience.
Hmm.
And when we do that, he will direct our path. And
Yeah.
it was
Yep.
that one little thing where I went, that's the next step.
Sure.
Yep.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Yeah, and kind of a quick little step back and what she said about just social media a lot of times is her lens into the outside world. I'll come home from work a lot of times and she'll ask me how my day was, and I don't like to relive every bit of it, but I'll ask her how her day was and she's like, "Well, I talked to 4 little people and kind of just hung out and, did school or, throughout the summer break or whatever, did other things." But yeah, it's just kind of
Yeah.
funny. This is, like you said, social media and your kind of quote unquote online friends and,
Mhm.
the different people you interact with.
Yeah.
That's kind of your biggest lens into the outside world throughout the week.
Yeah, and those online friends have become true
Yeah.
friends. I've
Yeah.
actually met a lot of them. I don't know if we've shared this story before, but it's quite funny. So a while back, Abby, M is for Mama on Instagram, she was having a book launch for her
Yeah.
first book. And I was going to go and meet my friend, Mackenzie, Twigs and Sage, also on Instagram. And I had never met her before. And we were going to meet up in Texas for the first time, and we were going to room together. And James was convinced that she was not a real person and that I was going to be meeting a dude down in Texas. So we get down there and I see her. She like runs.
I do want to clarify. Like, basically, her, like, Mackenzie was posing as a
Yes.
dude, like, kind of, I literally, said, yeah, he's probably some, 55-year-old creeper, type of thing.
Yes.
It's Mackenzie, but so, yeah, go ahead.
So anyway, she comes just barreling at me when she sees me, throws her arms around me, gives me the biggest hug. It was like we had known each other in person forever. I sent him a picture and I was like,
She does
Yeah.
exist. She's real.
proof of life. But then it gets really funny is she had actually booked our car rental. And when we got up to the rental, they took her driver's license and just like disappeared.
Yeah.
And they were gone for 5, 10, 15 minutes. And he comes back and he's like, I'm really sorry, but your driver's license doesn't work. And she's like, what? And he goes, well, we have 2 options. Either your friend can rent the car or I can call the police. And she's like, what are you talking about? He goes, well, this happens every now and then. Like, just sometimes, like, the driver's license don't
Right.
validate. But I'm sending James these messages going, now her driver's license
Yeah,
doesn't
it started off
work.
so good, and now it's really going downhill.
It's like, she's not who she says she
Uh,
is. No, but it all worked out fine. I ended up renting the vehicle, but
yeah,
she
yeah.
is a real person and she's beautiful and I just love her to pieces. So,
Yeah.
anyways, yeah.
So that was all for free.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's part of the social media world that you live in. So
Yeah.
yes, like you said, both online and real friends.
Yeah. It is funny though, because going back to why I took the break, I did find, as I was thinking about why I needed to do this, I realized that so much of my mind is hardwired to think in terms of social media.
Hmm.
When I am taking a photo of my child, I try to frame it just right so that I can put words up in the corner and caption it,
Hmm.
or I want to make sure that my house is looking just right so that if I take a picture of this moment, rather than just enjoying the moment, I was trying to stage the moment. And I
Hmm.
realized I've been doing this for so long that it was just kind of happening second nature and I didn't even realize that I was doing it. And it would even boil or like come into my devotional time. I'd
Sure.
be reading something and I'm like, this is so good. And I knew it was from God, but then I thought, oh, I need to share this on social media. And I was like, I don't think this is healthy, for my mind. And
Hmm.
so as I was thinking of taking the break, I thought that is my purpose in this is just to re-hardwire my brain into that's not what the point is.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily unhealthy all the time.
No.
Obviously, when you're reading your devotions and you want to share something, just because it is on social media doesn't mean that it's necessarily a bad thing.
Right.
But what I liked most about that is just it made you think.
Mhm.
It was like, all right, what is the goal here, or maybe what am I doing that isn't healthy,
Mhm.
or what are the healthy parts of it, and kind of why you got back into it. But
Yeah.
I just, like I said, I think it's good to do these little resets and know, hey, this is really important. This is what I missed, or this is honestly, just a waste of time, or
Mhm.
maybe things that I didn't miss.
Yeah.
So,
I'm currently doing a devotional on idols,
hmm.
and it's been really good because each devotional is on a different idol that is a
Hmm.
potential in your life, from work to friends to your kids to your marriage to body image, just all of those things. And it's been really good because, like you said, it makes me think and makes
Yep.
me pause and just kind of go, okay, is this something that I'm struggling with
Right.
right now? And not saying that everything has to be an idol. Like,
No.
it's
Yeah.
okay if you want to look nice.
Yeah.
It's when you elevate that to where you are willing to sin
Hmm.
to look nice, if that
Sure.
makes sense.
Yeah.
So, I want to
Yep.
be clear that not everything is an idol if you enjoy it, because God has given us
No.
things
Yeah.
to enjoy and He has given us, these bodies to steward. And but I think it is good to sometimes take a step back and just to really evaluate
For sure.
why you're doing the things you're doing.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I love it. And again, that's something that happened over a couple months. It wasn't necessarily like every single moment of every day you're
Oh,
sitting there reevaluating or whatever.
right.
Like sometimes when we talk about these things, it's like, obviously it's in a very condensed version, or at least we're conveying it in a very condensed version. But yeah, these are things that, it's just like you said before, just simple obedience,
Exactly.
kind of what, well, okay, this makes sense for today. And this is what I'm going to do this week or what I plan to do this month or whatever. And
Mhm.
then it just kind of, God works from there. So,
Exactly.
yeah. So, good stuff. What would you say the first thing you learned during your break?
I think the first thing that I learned was that when you remove something from your life,
Mm-hmm.
you will replace it with something else.
Mm-hmm.
So when I removed social media from my time, something else filled it right away. It
Sure.
wasn't that that time just became completely open and I immediately filled it with good things. I found that other things started to creep in too.
Sure.
And they weren't necessarily bad things, but instead of being on Instagram and Facebook, I found myself opening up YouTube a little bit more.
Yep.
When I just wanted to research something, I just found other avenues
Yeah.
for information, if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
No, it totally does. I've used the analogy before that in gardening, if you pull a weed and or maybe let's say it's a bush that you don't want there. You something a
Mhm.
little more substance, and you dig it out. And you just leave that hole there, like you said, it's going to get filled with something, and it's
Exactly.
probably debris or other weeds or other
Mhm.
things that you also don't want there. But
Mhm.
if you're intentional and you plant a rose bush there or some type of other plant that you actually want there,
Mhm.
then now that can take root, that can flourish and things like that. So it's not necessarily just the taking away that's important. It's also the intentionality of replacing it.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's actually the second thing that I was going to say that I learned was that I did need to be very intentional because other things did start to fill that time. And if you're going to take something out, you need to be intentional with what you're putting back into it.
Sure.
There
Yep.
were things that I wanted to accomplish on this break. One of them, being just a closer connection with my kids,
Yep.
looking you more in the eyes when we're talking and
That's what I like
whatnot.
about these podcasts. You just sit here and look into my eyes.
Yes. No.
Yeah.
And just like sharing or doing the things that I actually wanted to fill that hole with,
Sure. Yeah.
removing something and filling it with something that was good.
Yep.
And so being intentional with my time, I found that I was reading more and I was knitting more and I was playing with my kids even more, which I mean, I do quite a bit of it.
Mhm.
But it seemed to take away a little bit of this, there's something else I need to be doing. I felt like I was able to be a little more present during
Mhm.
those times because there wasn't something else I felt like I needed to be doing. That was the thing I was supposed to be doing in that moment because I intentionally told myself, this is what I want to do during my
Yeah,
fast.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's good. And yeah, I think social media, that phrase, it's kind of easy for people to blame that or whatever, maybe like, in wasting your time or in this or in that. And it's not necessarily just the social media
Hmm.
that's to be blamed. It's really your choice of how you are spending your
Yeah.
time or how you are letting it impact your mind or your, just adding frustration to your life or whatever.
Yeah.
It's
You
not
actually
necessary.
stole my third point
Oh my
too.
goodness, am I jumping ahead?
You are. You keep jumping on
I'm
me.
sorry. Well, I'm just keeping you on your toes
No, that's
here.
all right. The third thing is that when you remove social media,
Uh huh.
it doesn't fix all the problems. Because I
Hmm.
think I thought in my mind that when I removed social media, everything else would just get that much easier. The things that I was struggling with would be that much easier. I thought, man, this little bit of anxiousness that I might be feeling, or just kind of like, maybe I was a little bit cranky or whatever. I kind of
Hmm.
blamed that on social media, thought,
Sure.
maybe the social media consumption is causing me to be a little grumpier. And after I removed it, I realized, it wasn't just social media. I, have some heart work to do,
Hmm.
So taking a social media break is very good, but it's not the fix all is the
Sure.
thing that and I think that's the thing I was looking for was I was looking for it to fix things in myself. It was like that
Hmm.
one hard step. And then I realized, oh, I still have a lot of work to do in my life.
Yeah. But again, it gave you maybe the space or the time to, realize that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Would I do it again? Absolutely. And I do think that everyone should take a break at some point, whether it's once a week or whether you take a week a month or whether you take like I did, a couple months off.
Sure.
It's very healthy. I had been doing one day off every week. Usually
Hmm.
every Monday I am
Yep.
off social media. And that is just a time for me to say, I can say no to this, which I know sounds kind of silly, but when you're on quite a bit,
Yeah.
I that is something that I needed to tell myself that I'm not going to be on Mondays. This is my
Hmm.
time to focus on, whatever it is. And I also try very hard to never be on during school.
Hmm.
So these
Those are business hours.
business hours,
Yeah.
yeah. But taking intentional breaks during certain times is really good
Hmm.
for you. And that's just being wise with your time and not allowing something to, you know, take over
Sure.
your life. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes sense. Honestly, I think it's good, and I do that sometimes too with, or actually fairly often, with things that I find myself doing every day.
Mhm.
So it can be as simple as coffee. Like I enjoy drinking coffee in the morning, right? Like the millions and billions of other people. But every once in a while, if you take 2-3 days off and you just choose not to drink coffee or whatever it is, replace it with anything, and it can be as simple and as harmless as coffee. But
Mhm.
I don't know. I think it's just a little, you know, will test or
Mm.
a strength test of your will that you can just choose to. It's not controlling you, I guess,
Exactly.
is the point.
It's
Yeah.
almost like we're proving to ourselves
Yeah.
that this doesn't control
Hmm.
us, which I don't think is a bad thing,
No,
you know?
yeah, yeah. It's a little test, and I mean, another thing like what I'll do every once in a while is I'll literally wear my watch on my right wrist instead of my left, or something like that.
Yeah.
Where
Like
it's
brush
like,
your teeth with like your
yeah,
left
like little
hand or
mind
something.
games,
Yeah.
and so that's a little test of the will as well. So yeah, so I've obviously not been following our notes quite as well as I should have, but are there any other things that you learned? I guess
I don't
during your
think
break.
so. So just to kind of break it back down again, the first thing that I learned was that when you remove something from your life, something else will replace it. And that secondly, you need to be intentional with what what is replacing it. Otherwise, other things will creep in that
Sure.
you don't necessarily want to have creeped in. And then thirdly is that when you replace something, it doesn't necessarily fix the problems. You actually have to really get to the root of it, which
Hmm.
usually boils down to the heart, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so,
No, that's good. And I think that kind of you had mentioned a story recently. I think Sarah Ruth told you, something about like in specifically related to this podcast.
oh, yeah. When I
Yeah.
was asking her, I was kind of talking back and forth with my friend Sarah Ruth, and I just told her, I said, I'm struggling a little bit with whether to even come back to social media because
Yes. Yeah.
honestly, I really enjoyed my break.
Hmm.
And I was like, I don't know if I should come back, how I should come back, when to come back. I really was just kind of bouncing ideas off of her and just kind of sharing where I was at. And I really appreciated what she said. And it actually tied in with the sermons that we've been
Yeah. Yeah.
listening to
It
because
is amazing how God works that way.
it
Yeah.
is. And we don't go to the same church. So she hadn't heard the same sermons that I
No.
was
Yeah.
hearing. And she said, Shanda, she said, my immediate thought with what you are telling me is she said, if you don't come back, you are burying talents God has given you. And
Yeah.
I was just like, okay, like I took that and I said, okay, if this is what God wants me to do with the talents, like if this is my widow's
Hmm.
mite, these are the talents that I can bring before the Lord and lay on the altar and say, you've given me this,
Yep.
now multiply it,
Yeah.
And so we're back.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, it's good to be back. Michigan won the national championship since we were.
Lions are doing
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. When this comes out, we will know whether or not the Lions won the NFC championship game.
Oof.
Yeah, I don't think it's gonna probably turn out good, but it's been a fun ride to get here. But yeah,
Are you
so
prophesying right now?
yeah, yeah. So it was basically God's voice that it prompted you to take the break from social media, and it was Sarah Ruth's voice that brought you back. So
Well, I would like to think that God was using Sarah
that's
Ruth to
funny.
bring us
Yeah.
back. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Well, good.
Yeah, so I wanted to share kind of like to wrap all of this up is there is a really, really good book. It's called 12 Ways Your Phone is Changing You. I read this a few years ago.
You did, yeah.
And
Yeah.
I remember as I was reading it going, wow.
Yeah, it was one of those books that almost every day when I come home from work, she was like recounting things that she read or
Yes.
telling me, like, this is so good or whatever. But it was one of those books.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's called 12 Ways Your Phone is Changing You by Tony Reinke. And basically he breaks down in each chapter a way that your phone is kind of re-hardwiring your brain.
Yeah.
And it's not just him spewing random things. Like he has so many facts that go along with it. And I had some friends recently that were reading this and were talking about this. Like, what did you think about this?
Yeah.
And I will say, after reading it, I didn't come away from it going, I need to get off social media. I mean, it took probably 3 more years before I finally decided to take the break. So it just was good information. And I think the reason that it is good to read through is because it helps you once again to think about why and how you are consuming
Yeah.
social media or
That's
just
awesome.
media in general. And so having the practical information of what your phone is doing to you gives you an opportunity to put up safeguards. It gives you the opportunity to say, no, I'm going to take a break every Monday. I'm not going to look at my phone on Mondays,
Right. Yep.
or it gives you an opportunity to say, wow, I didn't realize how addicted I was to this. I need to take a long break
Sure.
and let my brain just kind of rehardwire
Right.
and be focused more on the people who are in front of me, not the people who are across the world,
Mhm.
you know?
Yep.
So there was a quote that he had in here, and I'm going to read it. It says, the more we take refuge in distraction, the more habituated we become to mere stimulation and the more desensitized to delight. We lose our capacity to stop and ponder something deeply, to admire something beautiful for its own sake, to lose ourselves in the passion for a game, a story, or a person. And I just was like, man, to admire something beautiful for its own sake.
Mhm.
We live in such a distracted world. I love watching our kids because when they notice something, they are awed by
Yes.
it. They notice every tiny little detail. Then when they look at a flower, they don't just see yellow,
Yeah.
they see all of the little filaments and just the shape and the texture
Yep.
and the color. And I mean, they'll just sit there and they'll stare at it.
Yeah.
Like, when was the last time I just sat and stared at
Right.
something, just for the sake of its own beauty, for the beauty that God instilled into it, so that we could go, wow, God, you're really good.
Yeah, yeah, no, and it is like you said, they soak everything up so much. A lot of times when we'll have a family movie night and we're sitting there watching the movie, I'll actually sit and watch the kids.
Yeah.
I don't. Hopefully, it doesn't sound odd or whatever, but like I'll literally watch their faces and their eyes, and just one of our daughters, she just wears every emotion on her sleeve and on her face and in her body, and it's fun to watch.
It is.
How they're just taking it in, and just the wonder and the awe.
I
Yeah.
know we were watching Anne of Avonlea, I think, or it was like the sequel or whatever to Anne of Green Gables last night, and I was watching our youngest daughter, not our youngest daughter, our middle daughter,
Mhm.
at the very end when Anne and Gilbert kiss for the first time, and her face was
Yeah.
priceless because every girl, whether
Yeah.
you're 5 or 40, just loves a good, beautiful romance. And I
Yeah.
mean, it was so pure and so innocent and so
Mhm.
sweet.
Yeah.
And she just was sitting there grinning from ear to ear and like this, like, oh, they're
Very
kissing.
sheepish and
Yeah,
yeah,
like
yeah.
I kind of like that. So it was very sweet. But
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
that's awesome.
Anyways, so I just was going to read through real quick the 12 ways in the book, just so you can kind of have a good idea. And if you
Mhm.
kind of want to weigh in on any of them, just kind of stop me as I go.
Sure.
But the first one is we are addicted to distraction,
Mhm.
which I think we've kind of covered.
Yeah, yep, definitely
Um,
that was kind of the premise of why you took your break and things like that, and, yeah, I kinda beat that one to
Yeah,
death.
I mean,
Yep.
it's kind of like when you think you're going to get on for 2 minutes and you realize 15 went by.
Yeah,
You're just
yep,
like, we get sucked into this vortex.
yep.
We ignore our flesh and blood.
Mhm.
I think once again, that one's pretty obvious when we're staring at our screens and we're not looking into the eyes of the person across the table.
Yep.
You see kind of all of those commercially type
Yeah,
advertisements where it's everyone's out to dinner and they're all on their phone,
yeah, yep.
and
Yeah.
so that's
It's a
kind
little
of
harder to live in the present, or be in the present, when you're just in your phone. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, we crave immediate approval.
Mhm.
So this one I thought was actually very interesting, and I don't know, what your thoughts were on it, but I think this was the one that really struck me the most.
Mhm.
Was in this chapter he was talking about how when we are in an online world, all of our likes and clicks and whatever
Yeah.
starts to create this ethos for you, and
Mhm.
it becomes this very homogenized world for you
Yeah.
where the world around you is literally tailored to you.
Sure.
So you're not seeing anything you don't like hardly. It's
Mhm.
just, I mean, even if you think that you're seeing a ton of things you don't like, it's because your social media or whatever
Yeah.
actually knows you kind of like it because you took a second to stop and stare at
Right.
it.
You basically told the algorithms you like it.
Yes.
So yeah, so basically they will feed you. So if you kind of are charged by, a frustrating event overseas, or war or whatever, it's like even though like you just said, even though you don't like it, actually the algorithms know that you do like it and that
Yeah.
you will keep scrolling or whatever, So
Yeah.
yeah, but it does. It teaches you more of what you want to be taught. Yeah.
Basically,
Yeah.
yeah, and so you end up kind of losing touch with what it means to have a conversation with someone that you don't like,
Yeah.
especially because when you can share something online, you kind of hide behind this veil of
Sure.
anonymity. And,
Yeah.
he argues in the book, and I'm not giving away too much with this, but he argues that the church is actually a beautiful place to be because you
Mhm.
have different walks of life, different, social statuses, different ethnicities. You have
Yep.
people with disabilities. You have your triathletes,
Yeah.
and you have people even within the church who disagree on certain things.
Yep.
We don't all believe the exact same thing,
For
even
sure.
within a church. Like our foundation is the same, but you're not going to get quite as homogenous of a thing as you would online,
Right.
even.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree.
Basically,
Yep.
online is telling you what you want to
Right.
hear.
Yeah. And obviously online is polarizing, but it's almost a us versus them.
Hmm.
And it really doesn't, there's very little resolution that
Hmm.
you get with that.
Yep. And then the other one is we lose our literacy,
Hmm.
which how many times have you pulled your phone out to check a spelling of a word? I mean, I'm just
Yeah.
saying we'll move on from that one, but
Yeah.
we feed on the produced, which I think is one that you are very passionate about.
Yeah, yeah. So I've said for years, and whenever I say like I've said for years, obviously I'm a thinker and things like that, but I also probably got bits and pieces of it from other people along the way. I try to cite sources whenever I can,
This
but
one's just turned into yours. You've said it so
yeah,
many times.
yep. So the thing is you need to create more than you consume. So you've probably heard me say this on the podcast and previous episodes. But it's if you're only ever consuming, then you aren't creating just inherently. And I don't think that's a very fulfilling life. I
Hmm.
think that while we're able-bodied, while we're breathing, while we're capable, we need to create. And I'm not saying never consume, and I'm not saying never be entertained. But even in that consuming and entertainment, you can get fodder for what you're about to create.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, I think there's just a lot of power in that. And I think God made us. I mean, it literally in the beginning, God created. He was a creator. He is a creator. He is our creator.
Hmm.
And we are made in his image. So I think we're made to be creators as well.
Yeah.
And so if we don't ever get off social media and create some things in our family's life, our personal life, and in our community, then I think we're just missing out.
Yeah. You kind of
Yeah.
have to wring out the sponge sometimes so
Yeah.
that you can add more in
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. You don't want to be fully saturated. Yep.
Exactly. Yep. So the other one is we become what we like,
Hmm.
which I think that ties in a little
Yeah.
bit
Kind
with
of.
that,
Yep.
the immediate approval thing. We get lonely.
Hmm.
In a world that is so connected right now, it is also a world that is one of the loneliest generations
Yeah.
that we've had. And it's because we're missing that in person
Yeah.
connection.
Yeah. It's kind of almost hard to fathom, but it's so true.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And then we get comfortable in our secret vices.
Hmm.
Once again, pornography
Yep.
is just astronomically on the rise. I don't
Yes.
have any of the stats on that, but I think it says, that the first exposure now for kids is like age 9 or 11,
Yeah.
something,
Yeah.
something very young. And that wasn't even on my radar at
Sure.
that age. I was still building forts in the woods.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we lose meaning.
Yep.
And I think that too is part of my break, I think a
Hmm.
little bit is because you're trying to, or you see so much online and you think, wow, they're doing all these big and really great and really awesome
Yeah.
things.
Yep.
My stuff looks piddly compared to that,
Hmm.
and then it kind of just makes you feel a little bit like, why even try?
Yeah. Yep.
You lose a little bit of meaning with the beautiful things that are happening around you.
Yeah, yeah, it's so easy to hyper focus on other people's just like you said, the positive things, the negative things, any of it. And jealousy can creep in so easily. Resentment can creep in. just a defeated attitude, becoming depressed, looking at your own life in a very victim mindset mentality. And, again, we can do that at church. We can do that in our community, but it's really easy when you are, scrolling through social media
You're seeing
to
everyone's highlight reels.
yes, the highlight reels there, and it's a lot of highlight reels. Like you
Mhm.
can be jealous of your two or three friends, close friends that or whatever, but it's like hundreds and thousands of people,
Mhm.
and again, the algorithms are going to show you the best of the best, and so
Mhm.
it's really easy to do that. But so, I also just wanted to add in real quick is if you have the mindset where it fuels you and it makes you more energized to do your own things, to create more, to whatever, then it can be a positive. It's not,
Mhm.
again, it's not necessarily all a bad thing. It's just don't let it become a bad thing.
Yeah, like I
Yeah.
said, after reading this book, I didn't go, I need to get off social
Right.
media.
Yeah.
It just was, these are things I need to be aware of.
Yeah, totally.
And you actually kind of hit on the 10th one. It's the fear of missing out.
I always get to the punchline
You
before the
do.
punchline. Yeah.
Maybe you should write a book.
Maybe I'll start jotting down some ideas.
All
Yeah.
right. The next
Yeah.
one is we become harsh to one another. And
Mm-hmm.
that I think is the one that I am most guilty
Yeah.
of is when I have something going on in the back of my brain where I'm like, okay, I want to do this for this reason and I need to get this out. And there's like all these wheels spinning.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I find that I'm really short with my
Sure.
kids. And that's probably one of the biggest things. If I'm
Yeah.
just being totally honest, why I took the social media
Yeah.
break, as I needed to take a step back and just be like, all that stuff is gone,
Right.
you know?
Yeah. Their interruptions or their nagging or whatever become
Amplified.
way more amplified and daunting
Mhm.
when you're trying to do something, or honestly maybe you just want to take a break and
Right.
you're preoccupied, it's they come in plenty often enough just as it is, let alone when you're trying to do some things.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the last one on here, it says we lose our place in time. And I kind of alluded to that a little bit where
Yeah.
I was like, when you get on for 2 minutes, at least you think, and it's been
Hmm.
20,
Right.
and
Yeah.
it's like, whoa, where did that go?
Right.
Where did
Yeah.
that go? You do kind of lose your place in time a little bit. And obviously, we just kind of went over the 12 ways and just kind of, did a very light Cliff Notes version of them.
Hmm.
So I guess I'm going to say I definitely recommend reading The 12 Ways Your Phone is Changing You
Hmm.
by Tony Reinke. It's worth the read, very eye-opening, and he does bring it back to biblical principles, which I really
Yeah,
appreciated.
and again, we have no affiliation, with him or the book
Yeah.
or anything. It's
Just
just
one that I read.
just a recommendation.
Yep.
Yeah,
So I think that's a wrap for this episode. So
yeah. I think actually one more thing.
Oh.
So social media friends have been frustrated a little
Oh,
lately. Yep.
yeah. Okay. Yeah. You've got all the notes over there, but
Hmm.
it is funny because I've been talking with some of the bigger influencers
Yeah.
online, and we kind of chat a little bit, and a lot of us have been a little frustrated because engagement has been
Hmm.
down. Posts aren't getting seen, which directly impacts. For people who are actually making a living
Yeah.
off of these things. I
Yeah,
have
it
friends
impacts
that
their businesses.
it impacts their businesses.
Yeah.
So when they're not getting seen by, whatever this algorithm is out there that's putting
Hmm.
your content in front of other people, it can get really discouraging.
Yes.
But what I am kind of taking from that is just, even though things change and social media is constantly changing, it is just a really good reminder that God never changes
Yes.
and that He is the constant through all of this and
Yep.
that He is in control of us.
Yeah, yeah. So it was just a reminder that, and again, we're not talking about just others, like obviously you've been looking at your own social media
Yeah.
and Instagram and things like that and that engagement. And like you said, it was a reminder that engagement with Christ, engagement with your spouse, engagement with your family is obviously always the most important.
Mhm.
And then all of the other stuff, all of the rest of it is just kind of icing on the cake. And, again, if it's your livelihood, then obviously it's important. You need to, keep working hard at it and whatnot. But as long as you keep things into perspective,
Mhm.
or in perspective, that's the important part. So
Yeah, and if you are on social media and you do have someone that you follow that you really enjoy their content, like and comment on it.
yeah,
You don't know how much that actually
for
means
sure.
to
Yeah.
people who are spending their time and their effort to bring you content that is going to help you.
Yes.
And if you can like or comment on something, it really does make their day.
Yeah,
I'm
for sure.
just putting that out there.
Yeah, and even if it's not just for the algorithm, I don't know why algorithms come up so much in this podcast, but even if it's not just for that, the actual encouragement
The
it
person
is,
behind the
yes,
screen gets true encouragement
yeah,
from it where they're like, well, actually, I should say this. I have received several messages
yep,
in the past, couple weeks since coming back onto social
hmm,
media, and people have been like, "I'm so glad you're back. I really appreciate you in this space. You are an encouragement to me."
yep,
And my response back to them is, "You have no idea how much of an encouragement you
for
just were
sure.
to me because you now are encouraging me to continue doing what I'm
Yeah,
doing."
and I would even take that a step further. One of the main reasons why we are continuing with the podcast is because we got quite a few messages from people
Mhm.
specifically bringing up the podcast. And without that, again, we were planning on, continuing the
Mhm.
podcast regardless, but boy, that sure brought it home and
Mhm.
cemented it in our minds that this is worth doing,
Mhm.
and that even if it helps a few people or a few hundred or a few thousand or a few million people, it doesn't matter. It's worth doing, and so
Exactly.
that encouragement made a big difference.
And it's
Yeah.
not for like the praise of men.
No.
Like
Yeah.
that's not what we're talking about here. We're
No.
not saying please praise us
No.
so
It's
we
just
keep doing
positive
this.
feedback.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just okay. It's like that once again that little shot in the arm to be like, okay, this is where God has us. He wants us to keep doing
Yep.
this and there are even if it's just that one person who's benefiting from it in that moment,
Yep.
that's why we're doing this.
Yes, yeah,
you
for
know.
sure. And if you have specific things, I know we bring it up pretty regularly, that we'd love to hear from you. If you have something specific that you think that would be a good topic for future podcasts, if you are, really interested in hearing someone in particular that we should interview on this podcast, please let us know. If you're on YouTube, leave a comment. Reach out to us via email. It's
Mhm.
podcast@thisdevotedlife.com.
Good job.
Yep. So, those are things that, again, the more content that we can deliver to you that's useful to you, the better it is for all of us. So
Exactly.
we do want to be an encouragement. We want to be a help. We want to be impactful. And just the future is bright.
Mhm. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, we really would appreciate a, review.
Yeah, a
A
5-star
five-star
review.
review.
Yeah, but seriously,
Yeah.
it does mean a lot. And we read everything. It's not like we have some giant following. Like she said, we don't have any employees that, any social media managers, any, podcast producer, things like that. So we personally read everything.
Mhm.
And if it's some constructive criticism, we want to hear it. If it's some recommendations, we want to hear it. Yeah,
Mhm.
all of it's good.
Mhm. All right. Now, is that a wrap?
I think that's a wrap.
Okay.
Yeah.
I tried ending this about 10 minutes ago, I think, but
Yeah,
that was
we
good.
hung on a little longer.
We did. All right. Well, until next time, continue to seek God, love your spouse, hug your kids, and stay devoted. Thank you for tuning in to This Devoted Life podcast with James and Shanda. We appreciate your support in sharing biblical, uplifting truths with the world. If you found value in this episode, please leave us a rating and review on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback helps us to improve the show, and we'd love to hear from you. Be sure to hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. To learn more about how to live a life devoted to God and family, head over to thisdevotedlife.com. You can also follow me, Shanda, on Instagram at devoted_motherhood. Thank you again for listening, and we look forward to seeing you next time on This Devoted Life podcast.